This evening, Cynthia, or this evening for me, this afternoon for most of you, Cynthia has volunteered to be our presenter for today. And Cynthia, I have to acknowledge that when Cynthia made the invitation, she did so very tentatively, as if perhaps what she had to share and talk about might not be appropriate or might not be good enough or might not be. There was definitely some doubt and hesitation. Anyway, Cynthia has stepped up. She's being very bold and very brave. And Cynthia is going to give us a presentation in the next 5 or 10 minutes around camping with kids, but camping as a mechanism for learning to live with less. And there's so many lessons that we can get from that. So, Cynthia, I'm going to invite you to start your screen share and unmute yourself.
Okay.
I think we can probably do this in a fairly conversational way. So, if you want to ask questions along the way, I'm sure that will be fine. Alternatively, you can hold them until the end of the presentation and we can then have a bit more of a back and forth with Cynthia. Cynthia, I know we've got some former Girl Scouts in the audience as well this evening. Very enthusiastic and excited about the topic. So,
Okay. Here we go. Well, um, let me get this large so we can play it. There we go. So,
Sue.
got it. Okay. So, yeah, my name is Cynthia Saib. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm a retired teacher for special needs children. I worked mostly with children who had been traumatized by their families and were alienated, and or I also worked in animal assisted therapy to try and help children reconnect with living things in a positive way. I'm currently a student at Central New Mexico College in the Health, Wellness, and Public Safety Certificate Program. I'm interested in developing a heat preparedness plan for small communities in New Mexico. Camping with kids is important given the shift to greater individual and community sustainability that has begun. I don't know if, I mean, I've done a lot of camping. I was introduced to camping by my husband, and it prepared me to do other, things. And I know I had colleagues who went camping with kids, and it was very positive for them. So this presentation is taken from online slides from a company called REI, capital REI. In the United States, they are a outdoor gear kind of company. So starting from the very beginning, some of you may know all of this, but this is my lesson plan for the day. Where can I camp? Well, you can camp here in the United States at designated sites or dispersed sites. Now, I know, for instance, I had a friend in Spain, and they would camp at privately owned parks. But so this is particular to the United States. So just FYI. So designated sites, some campgrounds allow reservations, others are first come, first serve. Most charge fees and they're easy to access without a four-wheel drive vehicle. Designated sites are usually located at developed campgrounds and may come with amenities like toilets, public picnic tables, and treated water. People who are new to camping may prefer designated sites. And in the photo here, you can see where there's a nice platform. This is tent camping, so it's car camping with a tent so that you can just drive like a four-door sedan with your tent and gear in the trunk and set up a site. Dispersed sites in the United States are available in national, state, and local parks and national forests. We also have the Bureau of Land Management that owns quite a lot of uh, uh, land in the country. You locate your own spot. Here's a rather remote spot somebody located. It's quite lovely. Be prepared to treat water or bring enough with you. Most dispersed sites lack trash cans, toilets, fire pits, and tent pads. Understand the leave no trace behind principles to minimize your impact. That is, you pack it in, you pack it out, just about everything. The cost in the states, national parks vary widely depending upon the type of site you're booking. For individual sites, you might expect to pay between $10 and $50 a night. Many campgrounds offer sites on a first come, first served basis. And that's only tricky if you're going to like a bluegrass festival. You need to get there like a week early to get the first come, first served site. Book as early as you can, and you can use recreation.gov to do that. Additional tips, bring cash, small bills for honor system kiosks at primitive campgrounds where you just fill out a form and then you put your money in an envelope in a little secured kiosk. Or you might need some cash to buy firewood. Of course, living in New Mexico, there are no fires allowed in any camping right now, and that kind of goes. My husband just came back from Utah. That was, I think, part of the case in Utah. Sometimes the winds here really also were discouraged to do camp outdoor fires because of the winds. Be aware that the internet connection may not work, especially this is true in rural areas. Research fire restrictions, know the park rules and regulations around campfires. And an important one in New Mexico is know the area's hunting season. Um, the sudden on-trail appearance of a hunter bearing a rifle, much less the carcass of an animal, can be a little alarming and disconcerting for me anyhow. So know if you're visiting a national forest during hunting season, that would also go for in New Mexico, that would be state, and that would also be BLM lands. Don't leave food or garbage out overnight or unattended, and don't take the Doritos to bed with you in the tent and put them in your sleeping bag because the bears have been known to find the Doritos with the people in the sleeping bag. Seal everything in a large bin anytime you're away from the camp or lock it in your car. So any food you have should never, even food scraps. So take some sort of a plastic container where you can put food scraps into it. We always travel with plastic bins that have a top that locks on or at least clips on so it's secure so the smell doesn't come out of the plastic container. Oh, I thought this was really sweet. So practice at home. Pitch a tent in the backyard or even inside your home. Let the kids hang out in it and sleep in it so they become comfortable with a new sleeping environment. This is a lot of fun whether you camp with your kids or not, but I thought it was such a sweet way of introducing camping to children. Then it says spend a half day at a lake shore or park and see how your kids react to the experience. So you don't want to just all of a sudden pack everybody up for the first time and head out for 2 nights to your national forest or state park. This is a nice way to break it in, and I thought it was really a rather sweet photo. Let kids help pack. Yes, you might say, oh no, but yeah, it's not a bad idea. Give each child a duffel bag in a different color. Have them pack their personal items in their own duffel bag. Remember, this is the beginning of teaching children how to organize and be responsible for their stuff. And, that's something that's actually comes through. I think it's kind of a subtle experience and skill that a lot of kids wouldn't have if they hadn't gone through this sort of experience of having to put it all together and, keep track of it on them by themselves. Okay, 50% of the time. Encourage them to always return those items to that duffel. So again, this is like teaching kids to use a whistle appropriately. This is part of the camping experience where you're actually going to give them increase their skill levels in some of their and responsibility. Pick kid-friendly campgrounds. I thought this was a cute photo. There's presumably the dad playing guitar and the little boy's got his frisbee. Pick campgrounds with kid-friendly things to do, trails, lakes, streams, and play areas. Remember this is if it's the first time you've taken children out, remember that you need to prepare things for them. So they'll find ways to create their own outdoor amusement, but you have to give them a few things to sort of work with. Bring toys that complement their outdoor play, such as a kite, a ball, flying disc, magnifying glass to spy insects, or binoculars. This one is really important, and it's something that we would have covered as well. We always covered this as teachers of special needs kids because they often had a hard time with rules, and they needed very sort of very contained, like three rules to remember. So set the ground rules for where your children can roam. You don't want them wandering into the campground next door. And remember, they're new to this, so all of this new sort of behavior or way of being, or this sort of being in this community, is different from just hanging out in the front yard or, at home. Be aware of certain features at the campground that could be hazardous, like if there's a road going nearby. If you're parking in a planned, campground, sometimes it has a main road that goes through in one direction and circles around, and make sure the children are aware of that. Give kids a whistle and teach them to blow it if they become separated from you. At first, I left this off, but then I ran it by my husband, who's a retired special needs teacher, and he said, "Oh no." He said that you should put that on the list because what's important is you teach them how to use it correctly. So it's like if they want to go around blowing the whistle, then maybe they need to sit down for 5 minutes and take a chill pill because that's not what you do with the whistle. Um, give kids their own flashlight or headlamp. That's really important because all of a sudden it gets dark. And it's like, wow, it got dark. And even as an adult, if you don't have your headlamp with you or on towards the end of the evening as it's starting to get dark, you can trip over anything that's in the campground. And the the main goal probably of think safety is to not get hurt, seriously hurt while you're out camping. This was sweet. I love these two kids. They're helping with breakfast. Involve your kids, even if it feels like you can pitch your tent or cook a meal faster by yourself, and that's really important. Involve your kids in chores, in camp chores as much as possible. Remember to, you may be used to like doing everything for them at home or not, but this is really a teaching, this is a learning opportunity for them. And it's also a way of making this fun for them and giving them a sense of, engagement and value what they're doing and you value them. Younger kids can help fill up water bottles, roll out sleeping bags, or pump up sleeping pads. Older kids can be put in charge of washing dishes or cooking one night's dinner. Of course, the older kids might say, well, the little ones can help, but mix it up. That's just put in there for like toddler or tiny kids, I think, but mix it all up. Find teaching moments, no matter what age your children are. It's never too early to learn about best practices to follow in their outdoors. So teach them to protect the environment, respect wildlife, and teach them to dispose of trash properly, the pack it in, pack it out. And before you know it, they're going to be teaching other children. You'll be amazed. Embrace dirt. Yay. I love these children in this photo. It's like, oh my gosh. But it's great. Kids will get dirty while camping. And remember, if we were in a situation where we had less water to work with, fewer showers, all of the cleaning that we do, and certainly in the U.S. Culture, is really gonna change and kind of like go, whoa, from 50 to nothing really fast. And so let kids get dirty and you get cool with it, let them get cool with it to a degree. Camping is the one place they should have room to get messy. If there's no running water at your site, consider setting up a small hand washing station or a hand washing station with a small bucket of soapy water. That's a great idea because if you sit water that that comes out of the plastic with a turn on it. You can just turn a little bit of water on in the bucket and wash your hands, and then you can use a nice biodegradable soap, and then you can have a rag there they can wipe their hands on. So it's just this beautiful way of like being so treating resources in such a precious manner. Here we go. Cut your teens some slack. I love this photo of this young woman. She looks great. I love to go camping with her. She looks so responsible. Many teens may be self-conscious about their bodies. Be flexible if they insist on packing hair or skin products that you might deem unnecessary for camping. Remember, this is introducing camping. This is camping with kids. It's just a couple of nights. It's the whole looking for an uplifting experience for family, for individuals, and nobody should hopefully come home bummed out about the experience. While you may not be able to get them to go cold turkey, consider setting some reasonable limits on smartphone use. And that's something you'll have to figure out. Again, you can take some devices because it's introduction to camping. Take some devices with you, but limit the amount of time that a child has to actually sit with that device turned on. And there's it's quite doable, and hopefully you have some sort of system like that at home where when kids have chores to do, do the chores before they say pick up whatever device or whatever. But you'll have to figure that out. But it's really it's something to be aware of if you're going to take them out because there may not be internet availability, and also if we're talking sustainability, um, it's really smartphones are not part of the natural environment. All right, allow room to grow. Look at these guys, they're taking off. Just absolutely cute. Look at the campsite. It's just so fun. It's one big kids' playground. This is a checklist, and this is the company I got all this information from, which I want to give them credit, REI Co-op. But this is a great checklist they have online if you need something to sort of actually give you some guidance on what to take if you're totally new, or if you just want to have it. It's a kind of a nice little checklist, actually. I think I would use it too. Okay, and that's Camping with Kids. Here we go. And here's the website for them, for the slides, REI, Learn Expert Advice, Camping Dash Kids, HTML. And that's my contact at Central New Mexico College. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
You're
I'm
welcome.
scribbling some notes here. It's my days of camping with children are in the past, and one grandchild at just a few months old is a little young for all that yet. But I think all of those tips apply for anybody that's relatively new for camping. And a couple of things that really stood out for me. We live in quite a cold climate, and so the slide about setting up the tent at home for practicing really struck me because it's one of the recommendations here when we've been without power for up to 2 weeks at a time, and it's in the winter when it's very cold. And one of the pieces of advice for survival is to put a tent in one room and in your warm room. So heat one room of your house and put a tent inside that room for sleeping because it maintains the temperature higher. And yeah, camping in your own house is fun and illuminating. And it would be good to do some of that before the power goes out and we have to do it. And the use of whistles was another big one for me. Because when you're dispersed or within your community, being able to attract attention and alert people, that struck me as being a really valuable piece of advice and information. But it's not for me to dialogue with you, Cynthia. It's for other people to talk about their own experiences camping or to raise any questions with you. So over to everyone else uh, for any questions or conversations. Risa said, perfect presentation, Cynthia, exactly as advertised, succinct and to the
Thank you.
point. Well done. Any questions for Cynthia or comments, things you'd like to share about your own experiences,
Yes,
perhaps?
that's what I'd like to hear. How about some more ideas?
Go ahead, Susan.
That was very good. Thank you for that. I grew up going to Girl Scouts, so I did a lot of backyard camping when I was a kid, and that got me used to being outside with the bugs and you know, dealing with that. And one of the things that we learned that, well, a couple of things that we learned that were really valuable was how to build a fire and how to be around a campfire safely. You know, what you can do, what you can't do with a campfire. In Girl Scouts, we always went everywhere with a buddy. You never went anywhere by yourself. I thought that was a really good rule. And also, we learned about the local critters that could do us harm. I grew up in the Texas Panhandle, and we had to learn about rattlesnakes. And we had to know that you can't go walking in the brush because there might be a snake in there, and what to do if you hear a rattlesnake. And that was one of the first things we learned. And we couldn't run around barefooted around our campsite. We had to have our shoes on at all times because there were scorpions and other critters, red ants and things that could sting us, and we were in their space, so we had to be aware of that and learn how to live in that space. So yeah, that was super valuable. And I made sure that when I was raising my son that he went into Boy Scouts so he could learn some of those same skills. And we took the kids camping, and he had so much fun with that. um, I'm really glad that we were able to do that with him, because he knows so much. He knows how to build a fire. He knows how to be outside with the critters and to be safe from bears and all those things. So yeah, I think it's just so important to expose your kids to those kinds of things, because I think it creates a flexibility in their lives that they can deal with things that pop up that are unusual. So yeah, very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Maple and then Daniel.
Hey everybody. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know it was going to be about kids, but well, not that it has to just be, but yeah, of course, like to bring them up. I mean, speaking of the US, I mean, there are people who have never peed outside. I mean, I've met them over my life. I like, how could they survive? I mean, heavy camping Girl Scout troop, not all of them are. We had a pretty good one. And then I got to go to camp. And then I showed my daughter how to backpack just one night because we camped a lot and hiked and everything. And I'd backpacked. I'd been on a survival trip not far from you up in the southwest Colorado there. But, that as far as the shit hits the fan prep, which is what partly we are about here. And I mean, they say if something big crisis happens, you're gonna decide either I'm gonna stay home or I'm gonna get the hell out. And so because they're gonna have the roads blocked, depending on what's going on, you're not gonna be able to like wait. So so this is to me kind of that option of going. And for that you gotta use the backpacking guidelines of like nothing extra, not a molecule of anything that you don't really need or good for emergencies, right? So we actually took the strings and the tags off of tea bags because that's extra weight. Because once you have your stuff for God knows how long, for a few weeks, and some flour to make fake pancakes to eat and some raisins and stuff to survive, that thing could still be 60, 70 pounds. And that's a lot. And then depending if you have water. So I'm just saying, like, you could go on and on all day about all these different things as far as, survival or, having stuff ready, what to take, what to think to take. So there's that whole realm, but, yeah. And you can even make like, I recommend those Campcraft books. There's some really cool old ones, Scouts or not Scouts, published, really cute, how to make like little tables. We made little tables. We lashed, just some knots, the little book with the different knots. And you can take sticks and like make furniture, in between trees or whatever out in the camp, depending on how long you're going to be there. And like I said, Americans, they bring freaking, they call Winnebago camp giant cars, vehicles. That ain't camping. Okay. I know you guys believe me, but oh, they call that camping. And or if they go to a tent, oh my God, they bring these giant inflatable mattresses and shit. Oh my God, that ain't camping. And they claim, oh, well, my back. Well, my back hurts. You know what? I sleep on a big piece of plywood in my apartment. I haven't had a mattress for a long time because my back, I have some issues in my back, and it kind of mimics being outdoors on the firm ground. I've always slept good when I did camp. You wake up and you stumble to the tent flap thing and you stand up straight. And I mean, I think I'm not alone there. Like, oh, I slept so good. My back feels good. Beautiful treat. It's different from a bed. So all
It's
those little
different.
things add up to actually being better, and to make with less. I think it would be at least go down that path and think about how to camp and tell the kids, okay, now we wouldn't really need this, and we wouldn't have all these dishes. You can get by with just the one cup and
Yeah.
one
What can
spoon.
you actually manage with? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's important
Super
too for the
maple.
survival. That was it. Yeah.
Thank you. Daniel,
I was just going to offer something very specific on the tent that most of the tents out there are poly tents, and canvas tents and poly tents are probably the two types of tents, but a canvas tent will hold in heat. It is also just as breathable as a poly tent. So if you are getting specific about tents, then a canvas tent is the way to go. I also wanted to say that plant literacy for these kids is also extremely important when they're in an ecosystem that they're not familiar with. Poison ivy, poison hemlock, berries that they eat that are toxic. I mean, it'd probably be a good idea to scour the campground and see what's out there, or see if you can identify stuff so you can tell them not to eat it. And then I wanted to say my last point was to maples. I think I pee outside 70% of the time and pee inside about 30% of the time. So I thoroughly enjoy peeing outside.
we're very polite in England. We call it the wild wee. And I'm a big fan too of wild wee. Barbara,
Well, I am not participating in that survey. Um, but I just want to say this is the second time in about a week that I have been reminded of what I learned when I was a kid growing up. We were poor, there were five kids. We only camped because that's what we did. And I was thinking when I heard you talk about the duffels, everybody had their own colored duffels. I don't know if anyone here is of the vintage where cases of bottled beer used to come in big boxes where the flap opens, they close in the middle. We each had our own case, all seven of us, with all of our stuff in it. So I hadn't thought about that in forever. It was our camping suitcase. So that a lot of things can be used in when times are it's quick getaways, that kind of thing. But the thing that a couple of ideas that I had, and one was not only not eating Doritos in your sleeping bag, but putting your food up, hanging it from a tree, or putting it in bear barrels if you're in that part of the country where that's a thing, so that we're not being assaulted by animals who are attracted to the smells and the food. But what I'm really finding is that this is empowering me, connecting me to the past that I had. The other example that came up last week was canning. And I was watching a thing on canning food, like including meats. I've not done that, but we had our own huge garden when we were young, and we were canning and freezing and preserving everything. And that's in my genes. I haven't done it in decades, but I know it's still there. And it's been so empowering. And Cynthia, you helped me with this today to take me back to the days when we camped. We roughed it. And it was really something. One of the things that my son is teaching me as he's taking up camping is solar lights. They have solar lights that they use to light the campground at night, And then the next day they get re-energized. And so it's just a handy way to have some lights. And I remember ivory soap because it floats in lakes and rivers. So when you're doing your bathing, you won't lose your soap. So I just want to thank you because it's reconnected me to some very wonderful times in my life, but some skills that I hadn't thought about using in a long time. And they're in there. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think your background in canning and preserving food, see, I think that's a skill that you bring to the community. So that's way cool. Thanks, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Cynthia. I notice I'm quite enlivened listening to you share that, Barbara, because that's the whole idea of solidarity, behind solidarity prepping, I guess. We all have knowledge within us that is really valuable as we face into the challenges, not only today's challenges, but the ones that are ahead of us. And so just stimulating these conversations, just being able to remind one another of what we know and of what could be helpful, and to refine those things and to get ourselves out of overwhelm and into a space of feeling empowered. So
Right.
yeah, lovely to hear that comment, Barbara. Naomi and then VJ.
Thanks, Cynthia, for that really thought-provoking presentation. I suppose my main thoughts when I'm thinking about this is I'm coming at it from a post emergency event that I experienced with my godchildren. Cynthia and I were in a breakout room before, so she kind of knows roughly where I am. I'm in Sweden, but I used to live in Switzerland, and I'm Irish, so very big melting pot. And I did not have the privilege of growing up and camping outdoors because I grew up in what was called the Troubles. It was a war. You did not go outside unless you absolutely had to at night time. So I experienced something with my godchildren where we had an atmospheric river event in the town that we were living in the Swiss Alps, and we were all put under an emergency evacuation alert. And my 5 godchildren were staying with me. And I was on my own with these 5 kids. And one of my godchildren turned to me and said, "Do we rescue ourselves? What do we do? Because the adults haven't told us what to do." And she was 9 years old, and this was only 5 years ago that this happened. And it made me realize, as someone who's worked in climate and sustainability science for 25 years, while I may have talked about this a lot, I've never actually done kind of drills with them, bringing them out into the forest, making them, and luckily in school in Switzerland, you do have forest school. So I was able to say to them, you do like they told you in forest school. You grab the bare essentials of what you need and you get out the door. And I think it's so important that children, and not just children, actually adults, because I think I was more triggered in that moment, realizing how unprepared I was. I mean, a 9-year-old was asking me what to do, and I didn't have a plan. And I didn't have a safe place that I'd chosen in the forest where we would meet up if we got separated. That was one of her questions. They had a lot of questions. So I think this is so, so important in terms of empowerment more than anything else, where if you have a grab bag ready to go that has very basic things like a tarpaulin, and it might not be a glamorous tent, and like previous people have said, mattresses and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very basic, and perhaps the only food things that you have are things like protein bars and things to sustain you. And I think that's also where, if there's an inherent knowledge of the food around you and that children know what they can forage and what they potentially can't. I think that also could really, really help. Because that was one of her big questions was what if we run out of the snacks that I had, because we prepared bags. We were literally ready to go out the door. And all I can say is, as someone who works in this industry and who thought she was really prepared, I never thought it would
You
come so
really will.
quickly.
Thank you, Naomi. A
I'm so
helpful
sorry to
reminder
have to
for
say
all of
it.
us.
Mm. And not an easy one,
No,
Pat,
not
not
at
an
all.
easy.
But a necessary reminder for all of us because we are all still so very privileged in the context in which we exist. VJ.
Yeah, my comment is learning how to dig a hole and poop in it. Everybody should have their own trowel and learn how to clean it if it gets feces on it with dirt and leaves. Um, and yes, of course, the plant uh, identification is really important. Um, some people they need privacy, so the buddy system is really important. So two people could go together and one person could turn their back, even help dig the hole. You got to dig the hole a certain depth. That's just really basic because everybody has to do this. And also, I felt it was necessary for people to practice by carrying at least a couple bottles of water in a backpack and some other supplies and walk around for a week before. You get up, get dressed, go take your breakfast in your house, your home, and then put your backpack on and walk with it so that you are actually preparing yourself to feel the weight that you're going to be required to carry.
Mm.
Anyways, those are two things that I thought might be important.
Practice, practice, practice. Okay. Thank you, everybody.